players smile at.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jayson Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I am your host, Sherrod Blakely, and I'm joined today by the esteemed David Aldridge, the Hall of Famer with The Athletic. David, how you doing today?
My man, I'm doing okay, Sherrod. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. We're just going to jump right into it. The Celtics defeated Dallas 107-89 in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Jaylen Brown with 22 points leading the Celtics, including 6 during a critical third-quarter run that kind of put the game away. Tatum had another playoff double-double with 16 and 11. And I wanted to start with Tatum because it seems whenever you talk about the Celtics, you almost inevitably start with Jayson Tatum. Had 16 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, but there were lots of questions from folks about whether that was enough of Tatum for this team to win a championship. It was enough to win Game 1. Just your thoughts of just Jayson Tatum's performance in Game 1.
Well, it's funny. I asked Al Horford about that last night after the game, and, he said it all starts with Tatum, and he's right. Like, I think people, if you just look at the stats, you can be misled. You can say, oh, he didn't have a good game because he was only 6 of 16 from the floor. But his presence makes it so difficult for opposing defenses to load up and try and take away the other things that Boston's really good at, right? Like if Tatum's not on the floor, you can close out the shooters a lot more aggressively because there's only one or two guys that can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket like he can. Like Jaylen can do it. He's gotten better at it. But Jason's the best guy they've got to do that. And that just creates so much pressure on defenses that even if you try to get the ball out of his hands with a double, now you're 4-on-3. We all know what Boston does when it's 4-on-3. It does not matter who has the ball. But Jayson starts that action is the point. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if you don't have that, then defenses are going to play the Celtics a lot differently. So his presence as a guy that can get 50 if you don't double him, and if he's on one on a given night, just really starts everything else. Now, they got a lot of other weapons. I'm not saying it's all him, but he starts it. He's the catalyst for everything else that the Celtics are able to do offensively.
Why do you think it is that him, maybe more than any other top 5, top 10 player, seems to even when he puts up a performance like last night, for example, there's this element of criticism levied his way that seems a little bit different than, let's say, an Anthony Edwards or Jokic or guys that are in that classification. Why do you think he seems to kind of come over maybe a little bit more scrutiny than some of the other top players in the league?
Oh, look, it's simple. They haven't won anything yet. Well, I said they haven't won anything. They haven't won a championship yet. They've been there, unlike Anthony Edwards, who just got there this year, so it's all new. Minnesota's a hot, new, young team and exciting. And so there's no scrutiny on him because they just got here, so there wouldn't be any scrutiny of him at that level. Jokic has a chip. Jokic has 3 MVPs. So the discussion point is, are you as good as the guy who's got 3 MVPs and won a championship? And he hasn't done that yet. And Boston has been there for the last 5 years. So clearly they're good enough to compete for championships, right? And they haven't been able to break through for whatever reason. I don't think it's all on Jayson. I think some of it is, but not all of it, certainly. So that's why it is. And it's ridiculous, of course, because who would trade what the Celtics have done the last 5 years unless you're the Warriors? You know what I mean? Like, so so they're right there. And it's always, look, we're in the what have you done for me lately world society. So he'll shut a lot of people up when they win his championship. But until then, he's going to get these things. And I'll say this, in all honesty and fairness, like, I think Jayson, like all young players, has had moments of struggle in the big situations. He's had games where he hadn't played well, in the finals or in the championship series. Unfortunately, he got hurt last year in the Game 7. If they win that game, They maybe beat Denver, and it's a completely different discussion, but they didn't. They got hurt. So, so that's what it is. It's the same thing Missoula gets. Missoula's an idiot. Missoula's a dummy, and now he's about to win a championship. So that's what happens in our world. And when you win a champ, even after you win a championship, there's people who are just going to say things just to say things. But that's, to me, that explains why Tatum kind of gets that smoke that other people on his level probably haven't gotten.
Yeah, because as someone who watches him play with on a regular basis, it's always surprising to me when I hear the kind of the national narrative about Tatum's not doing enough. I'm like, do you see the open shots that Derek White gets in that corner? Derek White, with all due respect, good player, but there's a reason why you're wide open and Tatum isn't. And it seems that he just I'd say this year more than maybe any other, he seems to embrace the fact that sometimes less of him is more for the team. I mean, and just from your observation of him, I mean, what do you see when you see him now?
I think he is much more, and again, this goes to the improvements that they made to the roster in the last couple of years. Doesn't feel the need. Like, I think a couple of years ago, he was under the impression, okay, I have got to score 30 in the playoffs for us to win. And that's not about, trying to be superhero or anything. It's like, it's just looking at the rest of the roster. You can't, all due respect to Marcus Smart, you can't expect Marcus Smart to score 20 and 25 in a playoff game. If he does, it's great, but that's not the expectation, right? Well, now you've got a guy in Porzingis who, if you get him the ball, he's going to go to work. He's going to get his shot. You know what I mean? There's not as much pressure. Jrue Holiday is not a great shooter percentage-wise, but he makes the shots that need to be made. He makes the plays that need to be made. And as you mentioned, Derek White has been lights out shooting the three this year. So he just has more firepower than he's had in previous years, and I think that allows him to kind of just let the game come to him, to use a cliche, and he doesn't have to force it. The double's there, move the ball, because there's somebody there that can make the shot. That's the problem with Boston, is that everybody's 5 out, 1 in, but everybody ain't got 5 shooters. They have 5 shooters on the floor at all times. Really, literally at all times with their current rotation. It's just impossible to guard all 5 of those guys. And again, that all starts with Tatum's ability to create and to get to the rim, and Jaylen to a lesser extent, but he has the same skill set now, a very similar skill set. So it's just really hard to load up on Boston, and I think that's part of his maturation, but also just part of they're a better team than they were 2 years ago. They have more weapons than they had 2 years ago, and they're just more able to put pressure on a defense for 48 minutes. That's what's unique to me about the Celtics, is that it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop, whether Porzingis is starting or Horford is starting. It doesn't stop when they bring in Pritchard and Hauser. It doesn't stop. They keep putting pressure on you offensively. And that's really hard to guard for 48 minutes.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at that team that they had a couple years ago, David, and clearly, that team was built in a way back then to where you could see them being one of the top tier teams in the East for the next few years. But I give Brad Stevens a lot of credit for recognizing there were 2 areas that I thought in that Miami Heat series that were clear weaknesses that they needed to address sooner rather than later. As much as I love Marcus Smart, I'm probably the president emeritus of the Marcus Smart fan club in Boston. Love everything about that guy. But there was a clear need for them to get some type of upgrade in that backcourt, a guy that could not only defend at a high level, but also make some big shots in big moments. And they also needed to have another stretch big. As good as Al Horford has been, he's at that point where, he's on the other side of that basketball mountain. And Luke Cornett, who we were told early on was a guy that could upstretch the floor, doesn't take any shots outside the paint. I'm still trying to figure that one out. So to Brad Stevens' credit, went out, made the deal for Jrue Holiday, made the deal for Porzingis, and basically addressed the 2 greatest weaknesses this team had from a couple years ago. And one of those players, Porzingis, I wanted to talk a little bit more about him. Game 1 was his first game back after missing the previous 10 with the calf injury. Came off the bench. I did not know what to expect from Kristaps. And then 5 minutes into the game, he's got like 5 points and just kind of kept pouring it on. What were your impressions of his first game back after that long and lengthy layoff? And did he show you more than you thought you'd see that quickly?
No, because I saw him in Washington for the last year and a half before he got to Boston.
That's
and
right.
I've seen him do this. This is what he just did it on a really bad team, but that doesn't mean he wasn't doing it every night. Like, this guy gets to his spots now. He has really improved his game the last couple of seasons. He's not at all the player he was in Dallas. He's not that guy. Now, some of that is they didn't use him. They just told him to stand in the corner and wait, which you could do, but it's not, I think, the best way to use him. And I think that's part of the clash he had with Luka, is that he knew that, hey, I can't just be a spot-up shooter. That's not the best way to utilize me. There's things I can do with the ball in the half court. And I love Rick Carlisle. He's a great coach, but he said, well, it's ridiculous for us to we lose when he shoots twos. We're better when he shoots threes. Like, again, you're kind of leaning away from what a guy is excellent at. He's become excellent at being at the nail. He's become excellent at the elbows. He is unguardable at his size. They put Lively on him. He went right past Lively and dunked on him. So quickness, he goes, if you're quick, he shoots over you. If you're slow, he goes past you. He's 7'2", so when he does the rip through move, his elbows hit you in the face, you back up and he shoots the shot. So that, it's really hard to guard this guy now. And he gives them that dimension. And to your point, I think Brad Stevens should get all the credit in the world for identifying that. Because when you think about it, I think at first glance, most people would have said, why would you bring in Kristaps Porzingis when you've already got two great scorers in Tatum and Brown? That's precisely why you bring in Kristaps Porzingis, because now it's even harder to guard Tatum and Brown. And it does not matter if Tatum goes 6 of 16 from the floor like he did in game one. Doesn't matter, because you just run the high ball screen for Porzingis. He gets it at the elbow. He squares up. He splashes. He is lethal now in the mid range, and so he really makes them a completely different team. And to your point about Giroux, I just think Giroux just wins, right? He's a winning basketball player. He was I think the catalyst for the Bucks winning their championship in 21, just because of his ability to, again, big plays, big moments. Like the closeout game against Indiana, Nembhard's going nuts. He's having, he's trying to keep him in it. The crowd's going nuts. What happens when the game's on the line? Giroux rips him, and ends the game. And he just does stuff like that. He knows how to play. He's a veteran. He does not care about stats. He doesn't care about anything but winning. And that makes them, again, an incredibly difficult team. They're really good defensively. Don't get me wrong. They're one of the top 4 or 5 teams defensively in the league. But I think what separates them is that they just put so much pressure on you offensively, and they don't stop. And it's really hard to hold up. Game one's a perfect example. Dallas fought their behinds off. They were down 29 in the second quarter. They got it down to 8 by the midway through the third quarter. I mean, they really put a run on Boston. And Boston called timeout, and 5 minutes later it was 20 again. That's what they can do. Like, it's just really hard to stay with them over 48 minutes. That's why they have the top net rating. It's 11. And it's one of the highest net ratings in the history of the game. And 8 of the top 10 teams with net ratings as high as Boston's have won the NBA championship. That net rating really projects to championship level basketball. And they destroy people. They're blowing people's doors off every night. And it's just hard to beat them. It's really hard.
It is. And, just to kind of, piggyback off the Drew talk, the thing that has impressed me more than anything else, and you get to see this on a night in, night out basis if you watch this team play, is the ridiculous core strength that he has. I mean, I've seen this guy guard Joel Embiid, and Joel can't get to the spot he wants to get to. There must be maybe less than a handful of guys in the NBA who can feel, and Steven Adams is one of them, who can probably make that claim. But Drew is a 6'4" guard. When they played Indiana, there was a possession where Miles Turner had the ball on the block, and 3 seconds later, he's damn near out of bounds because Drew has knocked him that far away from the play. Incredibly strong player.
As the NBA and NHL seasons start to wind down, things are just heating up in the WNBA and on the baseball front. There's no better time than now to join Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million active members. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports team this summer. You can make a Prize Pick lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, stat projections, and you're locked in. For me, one of my go-to guys has been Jayson Tatum of the Boston Celtics, who, when it comes to rebounding, I'm going more almost every time. He was great for me during the Eastern Conference Finals against Indiana when he reached double-digit rebounds in 3 of the 4 games. That's what I'm talking about, JT. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right. Just download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Speaking of strong, the performance by Porzingis in his return was a very strong performance, but it was a performance that came with him coming off the bench. And that raises a question. If you're Joe Mazzulla, do you stick with this particular rotation where he's coming off the bench, or do you throw him back to that starting lineup? What do you think?
Oh, no. Why would you change? You just won game 1 by 19. If there's – and, look, Porzingis probably not 100% yet. I don't know what the percentage is, but he's not 100. They said it was no minutes restriction, but obviously I'm sure they had him on a pitch count, and they're going to have him on a pitch count throughout the series. So why wouldn't you do that? Al, you can trust Al, obviously. At the start of games, he comes out with great energy. He blocked Luka's shot on a switch, early in the game, kind of set a tone there defensively. So you're not losing anything by starting at suit. They went 14-2 in the playoffs without him. You know what I mean? Or 12-2, whatever the number was. So they're fine. Why would you change that? And as long as KP is cool with it, and he said he was cool with it coming off, and played like it. Didn't seem like it bothered him at all. So he's still playing with most of the starters anyway. So it's you're just limiting his minutes at the start of each half, which is probably a smart thing because you can lean into Tatum and Brown early on in a game, and Derek White to a certain degree, and then you're bringing a guy off in KP that really, messes with anybody's defensive rotation. But with Dallas especially, I thought it was the one chance Dallas has is that Lively is their best big man defender in space. He's very good at it. He can handle that switch if it's a switch. But he couldn't handle Porzingis, and nobody could. They put Luka on him. They put Derek White on him. They put Hardy on him. They put everybody on him. He had one of those. He was on a real heater last night. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the case all the time. Maybe they double him a little earlier next time, get the ball out of his hands. But again, when you double Boston, it's 4-on-3. They kill 4-on-3. Kill it.
Yeah.
They have all year.
Yeah, they have. And the thing that this game highlighted, first of all, you're right. I mean, Porzingis was the matchup nightmare that we all envision him potentially being. A guy that whether you went big, small, no matter what type of defender, he always had some type of advantage that he has the skill set to exploit. And when you start looking back at game 1, it seems like, obviously defending Porzingis was a problem. I thought Jayson Tatum's drive and kick game was a problem because he was getting others involved. Jaylen Brown got into his bag when he wanted to and was able to kind of get pretty much what he wanted to when he needed it. But I thought, and again, I'm curious of your take on this. I thought if Dallas, the biggest problem they had, and they have quite a few, was the inability of Kyrie Irving to be impactful. For those of us who've watched Kyrie come into the TD Garden since that Brooklyn Nets, playoff series win where he stomped unlucky, Kyrie has not been very good. And he's been consistently bad. And game one was another one of those games. 12 points, 0 for 5 on three-pointers, 6 for 19 shooting. How big a factor is Kyrie's inability to get going to Dallas's troubles? Because they got a few issues, but where would you stack that? Is that maybe number 1, 2, top 3? How would you stack Kyrie's game being problematic for Dallas in this series?
Well, they obviously can't win without him and Luka being great, right? I mean, those are their two best players. They have to play great for them to have a chance, and they did play great. They've been great the whole playoffs. He just missed. I'm just not a big believer in, buildings or the history or all that. He missed. He was wide open. He had three wide open threes. He missed them. He doesn't miss those usually. You can tell he made two ridiculous shots fading away, coming across the lane. So it's not. I don't think it has anything to do with the venue. He just missed open shots. I don't think he's going to keep missing open shots. It's because he's just been playing so well during this postseason. And the shots he missed were big ones. He had one that would have cut it to 12. He had one that would have cut it to 9. Those are momentum shots. And the shots, because he missed those shots, instead of Dallas only being down 6 or 7 after 3, which is manageable for them with Luka and Kyrie in the fourth quarter, they were down 15 or 16. And that just is harder. That's really hard to overcome. So I don't think he's going to keep missing. I think he's going to they'll do things. They put the ball in P.J. Washington's hands a little bit in the second half to kind of let Kyrie and Luka play more off the ball. Luka got going a little bit. Kyrie didn't. I think he will. I don't think he's going to keep missing open shots because he's too good a player. So the issue, though, to your point, is that Dallas has other issues besides that. Their other players did not do very much in game one. Derek Jones, P.J. Washington, guys that Maxi Kleber, guys that they need to make shots. They're the guys that are in the corner, getting the corner threes. They had one corner 3 last night. That's not Dallas's game. Dallas's game is corner 3. They hung them, and they had 1 in game 1. That's not enough. It's not close to enough. They got to get 5 or 6 corner 3s to have a chance in this series every game. And so those guys have to make more shots, but Kyrie's got to make more shots. And I don't think there's any question about it. Luka had 1 assist. I mean, that's not his game.
Right.
That's it. His game is spraying the ball all over the place. But those guys have to make those shots for it to be effective. I think Dallas will make more shots. I don't think the series is over. I just think Dallas's problem is the same problem everybody else has. How do you get enough stops to stay in a game with the Celtics? How do you get enough stops? Because they never, well, I shouldn't say never. They rarely have nights where everybody's off. They just have so many guys that make shots. It just makes it really hard. Playoff games are built off of defensive momentum. You win playoff games when you get 4, 5, 6 stops in a row. You get a couple of turnovers. You get some runouts. You get a wide open 3 in transition. You get a transition dunk. You get a trailer 3. That's how playoff games are won. And you got to get 4 or 5 stops in a row. And it's been very difficult for teams to get 4 or 5 stops in a row against the Celtics offense so far.
Yeah, and the other factor in all that, is the lob, that which was such a big part of Dallas's offense that it was a complete non-factor in game one. And I thought that was a little bit surprising. And obviously having Porzingis back gave them an additional rim protector, but I thought Boston's guards did a much better job of crowding Luka and crowding Kyrie when they were in that that lob throwing position. It's when I looked, because I went back and looked at the game this morning, and there's a lot of things that Dallas really needs to improve upon. Not major overhaul, but there's just so many little things here, a little there, a little there. I'm not sure if they can kind of put it together and make this a 6-7 game series the way I think a lot of people envisioned. Go ahead.
I think it's going to go 6. I still think it's going 6, maybe 7, but 6 is the number. I just think Kyrie and Luka have been so good during these playoffs. They're not going to be this inefficient the entire series. They're going to have a couple of games where they shoot the ball extremely well. and put pressure on Boston, right? The same pressure that Boston put on Dallas, Dallas can put on Boston. They got two guys that are elite shot makers, elite. So it's a question of whether the other guys can get involved. To your point on the lobs, that just part of it was, maybe Dallas was a little rusty, having not played in a week and not being quite as sharp. I think part of it also, though, is that, Boston's defense with their length, especially, with Horford and Porzingis, those lobs that Luka usually can throw over people that switch on him. He can see the guy going to the front of the rim and get him to put the ball in his hands. Maybe that pass is a little off. I remember a couple where he got the ball to Gafford, but Gafford had to move to catch it. He couldn't just catch dunk like he usually does. He had to kind of move over a little bit, catch the ball, gather himself. Now the defense has a chance to recover. So that's just part of, Boston taking away some angles that Luka likes to throw to. And just being really sound defensively. I mean, they're very sound defense. They're a very good defensive team. Their guards are great crackback guys. They know how to guard bigger men, like you mentioned with Giroux. It's not a big deal. Derek White's fine if he's on a bigger guy. It's not something he's going to panic and start reaching and committing fouls. So they continue to be very solid defensively, even off of switches. And so Dallas has to find those corner threes. And and Kyrie's got to make the open shots he can make. I think those things are doable, but they've got to do them at a very high and efficient level to win this series.
The NBA Finals have finally arrived and will once again be one of the hottest tickets in sports. You want to be there and not have to mortgage the family home or take a second job to do so, right? Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. That's a huge get when it comes to the NBA Finals, which will start in Boston for Games 1 and 2. Those tickets are going to be super pricey, so waiting to the last minute and take advantage of the Game Time app makes a ton of sense. Here in Boston, every season is sporting season, so for me, the Game Time app makes it super easy to find tickets for just about every sport in my area, which is great this time of year when family or friends pop into town at the last minute and you're scrambling for something to do that won't break the bank, like, getting tickets to the NBA Finals. Game Time has you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Yeah, and both teams find themselves in very familiar places right now. The Celtics up 1-0 in the series. Dallas down 0-1. But here's the thing. Boston's only lost 2 playoff games, and they were both game 2s. Right. Dallas is 3-0 in the playoffs in game 2s. So, I mean, do the Mavs have an actual advantage going into this game based on that? Or what are your thoughts?
I wouldn't say an advantage, but I would say that they're not going to be shook being down 0-1, like you just said. They've been down 0-1 most of the playoffs. Like it's rare when they win game 1. They usually do lose game 1, and sometimes badly. So they're excellent at adjusting. I think Jason Kidd has been masterful this year in making adjustments after game 1 and throughout series. So I think they will adjust it. But I do agree with you. I mean, obviously, you're looking, all Dallas has to do is split. I mean, so they still have a chance to split, and we'll see if they can do that in game 2. I think they will make adjustments. I think they will attack Porzingis in different ways at both ends of the floor than they did in game 1. I think they will put the ball in PJ Washington's hands a little bit more and allow Luka and Kyrie to come off the screens and to move without the ball and maybe get some open looks. I think there's things they can do. I don't think the series is over by any stretch of the imagination. And Boston's been a little shaky in game 2. So we will see. This is a maturity game for me, Sherrod. Like, are you guys mature enough to not settle for the one win at home and to, put pressure on yourself? Now you got to go into a hornet's nest if you lose game 2. Now You're going down to Dallas. It's 1-1. Dallas has momentum. Their fans are going to go nuts. It's a great atmosphere down there. Or are you going to take care of business and really put the hammer on them in game 2 and make them look uphill and say, oh, snap, we got to beat these guys 4 times in 5 games. And the doubt starts to creep in, and that's when you can end the series quickly, right? So we'll see. It's a maturity game for Boston as much as it is, to me, a talent game in game 2.
And you mentioned some of the adjustments that Dallas could certainly make going to game 2, but from Boston's perspective, obviously they won, resoundingly. And other than that third quarter stretch where Dallas made it competitive, got it down to 8, the Celtics pretty much controlled the action. What adjustments do you think Joe Mazzulla is looking to make or thinking about making going into game 2?
I think the main thing to me is to make sure that Luka stays a scorer and not a passer. I think they can live with that. They didn't have to double Luka at all. Maybe they just, you would think they would continue to do that as long as Luka doesn't abuse that and become more pass first, which is really when he's at his best. But I think, to me, I don't really see a whole lot of adjustments that Boston has to make. I think it's Dallas that has to make all the adjustments, or most of the big adjustments in this series. I think for Boston, it's just making sure that you don't get careless with the ball. I think Dallas will be even more aggressive defensively in game 2 to try to get the game sped up a little bit so that they're in transition rather than Boston being in transition. You mentioned Porzingis. The other thing he did was he had 3 blocks in the first half, that got Boston out and running. So Dallas will think, hey, if we can really crowd Tatum, really crowd Brown, make them put the ball on the floor, be aggressive. We'll see how the referees call the game. Every game's called differently in the playoffs. If they allow us to get away with a little more contact, we can turn the game that way. And I think that's, I'm sure Dallas is going to play. And Dallas is certainly going to play with more of an edge, I think, because they know it's going to be really hard for them if they go down 0-2 without home court advantage. So, you're going to get Dallas's best shot in game 2.
Absolutely. Can't wait for game 2. Something's got to give. Either the Celtics, second game 2 struggles or Dallas's second game success. Something's got to break. We'll both be there for that, I'm sure. And again, this is the Big 3 NBA podcast of Sherrod Blakely. My guest today, David Aldridge of The Athletic. David, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. And again, follow his work on The Athletic. Had a really good piece the other day about the 2 Wizards in this series, and our good friend Porzingis and big fella coming off the bench for them, Gafford.
Yeah.
Really, really good story. I totally forgot that they were actually there at the same time. I knew they played in Washington. I forgot that they were actually Gafford was his backup. So that was a really good read. So I encourage folks to definitely check that out, as well as the rest of David's content on The Athletic. Again, for David Aldridge, this is Sherrod Blakely, and this is the Big 3 NBA podcast. Thanks so much.